Last night, a 45-year-old woman said something to me that stayed with me the entire night. She looked at me and said, "I spent my whole life trying to be the perfect woman for my partners, and in the end, the only man who remembered me with genuine love was the one I could just be myself with. No mask, no performance." And in that one sentence lies the key to everything I want to share with you today. After more than 20 years of working in emotional intelligence and listening to thousands of women on their healing journeys, I've discovered a truth that challenges everything we've been taught about love. We were taught that a woman has to be special, flawless, always put together to be unforgettable. But neuroscience tells us something very different. When a man truly falls in love, his brain doesn't remember what most women assume is important. While you're trying to be the best version of yourself, doing everything to impress him, his nervous system is registering something entirely different. And once you understand what actually gets imprinted in his emotional memory, you'll understand why so many relationships fail, while others last a lifetime. Because it's not about what you do, it's about how he feels when he's around you. Today I'll share with you 5 specific aspects that imprint themselves into a man's emotional memory when he falls deeply and honestly in love. And let me tell you right now, none of them have anything to do with your looks, your professional success, or your sexual performance. This is about something much deeper, your ability to activate a sense of emotional safety within him. Each of these aspects is supported by findings from effective neuroscience, specifically how the male brain processes emotions differently and what truly creates a deep, stable bond, one that remains even after the initial passion fades. And I'll warn you now, when this clicks, you may feel frustrated at first. You may wonder how much time you've wasted on the wrong strategies. But right after that, you'll feel immense relief, because you'll realize you don't have to become someone else to be unforgettable. The first aspect that imprints itself deeply into the heart and mind of a man in love is what I call the magnetism of authenticity. And I don't mean being dramatic or needing to be the center of attention. I mean that quiet confidence and calm that radiates from a woman who is at peace with herself. When you walk into a room and have nothing to prove, when your presence speaks for itself, something instinctive and profound is triggered in his brain, and his limbic system, the part responsible for emotion, safety, and stability, senses your inner balance, and that's what draws him in. He feels that he doesn't need to exhaust himself proving his worth to you. This kind of authenticity can't be faked. It's not a trick or a persona. It's born from walking through your own inner storms and choosing to accept yourself exactly as you are. When a woman stops fighting herself and embraces her imperfections, she begins to radiate something that words can't capture. I remember a client, heartbroken after her relationship ended. I was always there for him. I tried so hard to be perfect, to look flawless, she told me. But after months of deep inner work, something changed. She met someone in a bookstore browsing through plant books. We talked about plants for an hour. I wasn't trying to impress him, I was just present. They've now been together for 3 years. She didn't change her appearance, only her relationship with herself. She no longer needed external validation to feel worthy. And in that very moment, she became magnetic, because she stopped chasing love and started radiating it. And this is where many women are misled. They think confidence comes from pretending, hoping that one day it will feel real inside. But the male brain, that deep emotional part, recognizes authenticity. You can't fool him. He feels it when there's a gap between who you show yourself to be and who you really are. The deepest emotional imprint is left by women who have developed emotional authority. They know who they are. They know their boundaries. They do not apologize for existing. And when a man feels that energy, it stays with him as something rare and powerful. This kind of authority shows itself in the smallest things, the way you walk with quiet determination, the way you respond calmly and deliberately, the way you don't seek approval, the way you can sit in silence without feeling uncomfortable. That's not arrogance, it's vulnerability that has been transformed. It's the power of a woman who knows life brings storms and trusts in her inner strength to endure them. And now we come to the most fascinating part. The male brain is constantly and unconsciously assessing a woman's emotional stability. This isn't a conscious process. It happens through mirror neurons, the cells that allow our nervous systems to sense another person's emotional state. When a man is around a woman who has developed emotional grounding, his entire nervous system relaxes. Because he senses this woman won't fall apart under pressure, and that is incredibly attractive to him. The second aspect has to do with the quality of your presence when you're with him. We live in a time of fragmented attention where our minds constantly bounce between notifications, obligations, and distractions. But if you manage to create what I call full magnetic presence, if your attention is undivided, if you can truly be in the here and now, you give a man something that's become rare in today's overstimulated world. Let me share something that changed my view on this forever. In a session, a man once told me that what he remembered most about his ex wasn't her looks or her intelligence, it was the way she looked at him when he spoke. He said, "I felt like I was the only person in the universe." She wasn't thinking about what to say next. She wasn't checking her phone. She was just there, truly there. From a neurological perspective, when someone feels truly seen and heard, the brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone. But something even deeper happens. In a world where everyone's talking but few are truly listening, where conversations have become surface-level exchanges, having someone give you their full attention is like water in the desert. And I want you to know, presence doesn't mean being passive. It doesn't mean shrinking yourself. On the contrary, it's the ability to create a conscious space where true connection can happen. It's a steady gaze without rush. It's questions that go beneath the surface. It's quiet moments that aren't awkward, but where feelings can grow. One client once told me that the way she connected with men completely changed. "I used to always worry about what to say, how I looked, how to please him. It was exhausting. And now? I just listen. I'm fully present. I ask honest questions. I show up as myself." The responses she received were remarkable. She confirmed what science already knows. When we are truly present, we activate a sense of safety in the other person. The nervous system calms down because it senses no threat. But let me be clear. Full presence doesn't mean agreeing with everything he says. It doesn't mean suppressing your voice. Quite the opposite. True presence includes the ability to disagree respectfully, to set boundaries without disconnecting, and to speak honestly without manipulation. Men, especially those who have lived enough to know the difference between superficial and real relationships, remember these moments. Because in a world full of noise, someone who is truly present leaves an unforgettable mark. And now let me reveal the third aspect, the one that imprints itself deeply and lastingly in a man's emotional memory. your ability to be a safe emotional refuge. I don't mean providing him with material or financial security. I mean something deeper, the feeling that he can be vulnerable around you without being judged. Men have a rich inner world, but from a young age, they are taught to hide their emotions, to be strong. Vulnerability is seen as weakness. Over time, they build walls even against themselves. But when a man meets a woman who can hold space for his vulnerability, without correcting him, without dismissing his feelings or judging his fears, something profound happens in his nervous system. The oldest part of his brain sends out the signal, I'm safe here. I can be myself here. And believe me, that becomes one of the most treasured memories he takes from a relationship, because you gave him the gift of being imperfect and still loved. But here too, I want to make something very clear. Being an emotional refuge does not mean becoming his therapist. It doesn't mean taking responsibility for his feelings. It means developing the capacity to hold space, to stay present while he feels, without losing yourself in the process, without needing to fix everything. That takes deep emotional maturity, and that's exactly why it's so rare and so valuable. It's the difference between reacting from old wounds and responding with compassion. It's listening without offering unsolicited advice. It's acknowledging his emotions without losing your own center. One client told me about a moment with her partner. He came home one evening, broken after a long, difficult day. She didn't try to cheer him up. She simply said, I can see it's been a hard day. Do you want to tell me what happened? When he started to talk, she didn't interrupt. She gave no advice. She didn't minimize anything. She was just there. Later he told her, I've never felt so safe expressing my true feelings. From a neurological standpoint, that's a huge moment. His brain didn't just release oxytocin, the bonding hormone, it also reduced his cortisol levels, the stress hormone. His parasympathetic nervous system kicked in, the part responsible for calm, rest, and safety, and all of it was triggered by her presence. So remember this. If you can hold space for his vulnerability without feeling threatened by it, if you don't interpret it as weakness, you're sending him the most powerful message of all. You don't have to be perfect to be loved. And now we come to the fourth aspect, the quiet, simple, yet incredibly powerful one. It's the small, unconditional gestures of care that expect no praise or reward. I'm not talking about grand, romantic displays. I mean, the little things that silently say, I'm thinking of you, even when you're not around. From a neurological perspective, these kinds of gestures activate the brain's reward system more strongly than planned declarations of love. Why? Because they're unexpected, genuine, and they convey something that words often can't. I'm with you even when you can't see me. It can be a short message wishing him luck before a big meeting, or handing him his favorite coffee without saying a word, or a glance that says more than 1,000 sentences. These moments, when they're real, burn themselves into his emotional memory, because behind them is true attentiveness, not calculation. That's why you should never underestimate the power of what's done out of love, not out of a need to prove yourself. It's precisely these simple, sincere gestures that often become his most treasured memories of you. These are the moments when you casually bring up his neck pain and ask how it's feeling a few days later. When you send him a photo because something reminded you of a conversation you once had. When you notice he's stressed and make his favorite herbal tea without him having to say a word. When you listen to him talk about his projects, and weeks later you ask a specific question that shows you truly listened and remembered. And here we arrive at something essential that I want you to understand deeply. These little gestures must never be strategic. They can't come from a place of calculation, or from wanting something in return, or from trying to score points in the relationship. Their power lies entirely in their sincerity, in your genuine attentiveness and care, in your desire to truly see the man in front of you and contribute to his well-being, not for gain, but because you truly care. In every lasting relationship, these kinds of gestures are what I call emotional deposits into the heart account. They may not provoke grand reactions, but they do something far more valuable. They create a quiet, steady, deeply rooted sense of love, not performative, not conditional, but reliable. A man once told me why he decided to propose to his partner. It wasn't because of an anniversary or some dramatic moment. It was a regular Tuesday. He'd had a terrible week, exhausted, stressed, drained. When he came home, she greeted him with his favorite tea, kissed him on the forehead and said, "Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes. In that moment, he realized, for 2 years, I felt cared for without ever having to ask for it or earn it. That moment was the proof he needed. That true love, the kind that stays, is made of quiet, everyday, invisible acts. From a neurological perspective, each of those small gestures activated his brain's reward system, not in a dramatic surge of dopamine like a grand surprise, but gently, consistently, every time he looked at her. And over time, he linked her presence to a deep sense of safety. But there's something you need to know. If those gestures are driven by hidden motives, they lose all their power. The male brain is highly sensitive to inauthenticity. If your attention is laced with expectations, if it feels like a trade or a form of control, he'll sense it and he'll begin to close off. I remember a woman once asked me, "Isn't this just slipping back into the outdated role of the woman who takes care of everyone but herself?" And I told her, just as I'll tell you now, the difference is immense. This kind of care doesn't come from obligation. It's not expected. It's not demanded. It comes from a free choice. Because you want to love like that. Because this kind of love fills you. It doesn't drain you. Mature men, the ones who've lived enough to know the difference between intensity and consistency, appreciate that steady attention. They know that real connection isn't built on grand gestures, but in the small, quiet moments that don't need applause. And now we come to the final and perhaps most important point. The fifth element that becomes etched into a man's emotional memory is your ability to create what I call authentic, shared joy. I don't mean being funny or trying to constantly entertain him. I mean something deeper. Your ability to find lightness in the chaos of everyday life. In the midst of obligations, stress, and the weight of being an adult, to still create moments of joy, moments where you both get to breathe. Because as time goes on, life inevitably becomes more complex. The pressure builds. And if there's no shared joy, no mutual exhale, we slip into survival mode. But when a man has a woman by his side who can still find a spark of laughter on hard days, who can enjoy the little things without bitterness, who can be playful without losing her dignity, something almost magical happens in his nervous system. Shared laughter literally synchronizes the brain. It's a scientific fact. When two people laugh together, their brain waves align. The nervous system interprets that as safety, closeness, and connection. And it's those very moments that become anchors for love. They become the memories that last, even through hard times. Reminders of how you laughed at the silly things, shared your own little inside jokes, how you existed together with lightness. But I want you to understand, this kind of joy doesn't come from performing. It doesn't arise when you're trying to be someone else. It comes naturally when both of you feel safe enough to be fully yourselves, when you know you can laugh at your own flaws, when you don't need to be perfect, when you realize that not everything has to be serious. I remember a couple who had been married for over 15 years. The husband once said to me, "You know what I love most about her? She always finds a way to bring joy. Even on the hardest days, she'll look at me and do something ridiculous and I laugh like a kid again." That's it. That's emotional intelligence, the ability to create a space where love and laughter can live side by side, to show that life, even when heavy, can still be beautiful. That love doesn't need to be proven, it just needs to be lived. And here's what neuroscience tells us. When you share moments of true joy with someone, your brain doesn't just release endorphins and dopamine, it also strengthens the neural pathways associated with positive emotional memory. These moments become what neuroscientists call highly emotionally charged memories, the kind the brain holds on to because they're linked to deep, meaningful joy. That's why, even years later, a man might not remember all your deep conversations or the challenges you overcame together, but he'll remember the moments when you laughed until your stomachs hurt, the spontaneous lightness, the childlike joy, free from judgment, free from the weight of social expectations. Men who have lived enough to value emotional stability deeply crave these moments of emotional relief. They carry responsibility, have experienced disappointment, and know how heavy life can get. Meeting a woman who can create moments of genuine joy is like finding an oasis, a place where they can lay down their armor and simply be happy. And now I want you to recognize something essential. These 5 aspects that imprint themselves into a man's emotional memory. They are not tricks, not tactics for seduction. They are the natural result of your own inner growth, your ability to be present with yourself and to connect from a place of inner wholeness. And this isn't about changing yourself to win a man. It's about developing qualities that make you more complete as a person and therefore naturally more attractive to men who can recognize and value that depth. Because here's the truth I've learned from years of working with women. The men who are truly worthy of your time and emotional energy are the ones who have walked their own inner path, who recognize and appreciate these deeper qualities, who aren't looking for convenience, but for a true life companion. But there's something you must understand clearly. Cultivating these 5 qualities is not a strategy to win someone over. It is your path to your own fulfillment. Because when you embody authenticity, presence, emotional safety, genuine care, and shared joy, you don't just become magnetic to emotionally mature men, you also become someone you want to spend time with. I've seen too many women so focused on getting love that they forget to ask themselves what kind of love they truly want to receive. And within that lies a beautiful, paradoxical truth. When you focus on becoming the kind of woman you admire and respect, when you cultivate these qualities because they fulfill you, you will effortlessly attract men who have gone through their own inner transformation. It's as if there's a certain emotional frequency, and only those who have grown enough can tune into it. Men who value authenticity more than perfection, presence more than constant availability, emotional safety more than drama, honest care more than grand gestures, and true joy more than shallow entertainment. And when two people like that meet, something almost magical happens. There's no more fighting for the relationship like in immature connections. Instead, the relationship becomes a space for mutual growth, for vulnerability without fear, for celebrating both the extraordinary and the ordinary together. I remember a client, 48 years old, who told me something after 2 years of deep inner work, something I'll never forget. For the first time in my life, I'm in a relationship where I don't have to choose between being myself and being loved. She could be fully herself and feel more loved than ever before. That sentence perfectly captures what happens when you meet someone who sees and honors those 5 qualities in you. And if a man doesn't see them, if he's more interested in surface-level games or power plays, then he's simply not ready for the kind of mature love you seek and deserve. Because real love, the kind that truly matters, is not built on tactics or techniques. It grows in a space where you can be your true self, where you can be vulnerable without fear, where you can laugh together, care for each other, not with grand declarations but with quiet depth, where you can be fully present for him and he for you. That's the kind of connection that grows stronger with time, not weaker. A connection nourished by genuine emotional closeness. And when you find someone with whom you can build that kind of relationship, when you experience that depth of being seen and loved, you will understand completely why these 5 aspects imprint themselves forever into a man's emotional memory. Because they represent the most precious thing human connection can offer. The ability to be yourself in a world that constantly urges you to wear a mask. The gift of being cared for unconditionally. The experience of being fully seen and accepted. The freedom to be vulnerable without being hurt. And the simple yet profound joy of sharing life with someone who truly understands you. And here's one final truth I want to leave you with, something I share with every woman who follows my work. There is a monumental difference between seeking love from a place of lack and making space for love from a place of inner fullness. When you seek love out of lack, every relationship becomes an attempt to fill an internal void, to prove your worth, to feel whole. But when you make space for love from your own fullness, each relationship becomes an opportunity to share your existing happiness, to grow together, to multiply joy. This isn't just a philosophical idea. It has real, measurable effects on your nervous system. When you seek love from lack, your nervous system stays in survival mode. You constantly evaluate whether the other person is giving you enough attention, validation, or security. Your brain is on high alert, which blocks real emotional intimacy. But when you love from fullness, your nervous system is calm, open, and receptive. You see the other person for who they are. Instead of projecting your unmet needs onto them, you can respond rather than react. You can choose instead of repeating old survival patterns. And from this inner state of wholeness, those 5 qualities that imprint themselves on a man's emotional memory begin to grow naturally within you. Authenticity arises when you no longer feel the need to be someone else to feel worthy. True presence shows up when you no longer approach a connection hoping to gain something for yourself. Your ability to offer emotional refuge blossoms when your own stability doesn't rely on managing someone else's feelings. Sincere care emerges when you carry so much self-love that it naturally overflows. And real joy, it comes when you are at peace with life in all its messiness and beauty. Let me tell you something that happened to me years ago. Something that changed how I see life forever. I was walking through a park and saw an older woman feeding ducks. Her calmness made me stop. She told me she'd been widowed for 5 years after 40 years of marriage. But what moved me wasn't her story, it was how she told it. Without bitterness, without self-pity, and without forced smiles. She radiated a stillness that wasn't empty, it was deep. Inner peace. When I asked how she found that serenity, she said, "When you stop looking for someone to fill your emptiness and start celebrating the fullness of who you already are, everything changes. Love comes, but you don't need it to survive. You enjoy it because it adds to something beautiful that's already there." And you know what? That moment made me think of all the women I've guided over the years. The ones who managed to build deep, real, lasting relationships. They weren't always the most beautiful, or the ones who did everything right. They were the women who had found that same inner anchor that radiated from that elderly woman. Here's what I want you to understand. When you develop that inner fullness, not only do you attract better relationships, you also gain the wisdom to recognize the kind of love that truly deserves you. You stop accepting emotional crumbs. You stop staying in connections that demand you betray yourself. You stop repeating dynamics that drain you instead of nourishing you. You develop a sharper emotional radar. You begin to sense whether a man is really there to know you or simply projecting what he's missing in himself. You learn to distinguish between chemistry and emotional compatibility. You know whether he loves you because he sees you or because you fit a role he's already scripted. And this brings us to a crucial insight. Those 5 aspects only become lasting in a man's emotional memory if they come from your authentic self, not from a performance. The brain instantly registers whether there is harmony between what you show and what you feel. That's why you can't fake authenticity. You have to live it. You can't pretend to be present if you're not even present with yourself. You can't offer refuge if you haven't calmed your own inner storms. You can't give sincere care if it's born from obligation and not love. And you can't share true joy if it's covering up an unspoken sadness. That's the difference between technique and transformation. Techniques can create attraction. They might even get you a relationship, but they can't sustain a love that lasts. Only what you build within yourself can form the foundation of a lasting love. And one more thing, women who reach this level don't just attract better men, they themselves become better partners. You become able to love with more freedom, to offer closeness without losing yourself, to be vulnerable without becoming dependent, to give care without burning out, to surrender without losing your wholeness. That is maturity, the ability to carry and nurture a relationship that has meaning, not because you're building it out of fear, not because you're trying to meet someone else's expectations, but because you live it, because you know who you are, what you want, and what you're worth. Because in the end, when a man truly falls in love, he won't remember your accomplishments. He won't remember your techniques. He will remember that you allowed him to see your real self. He will remember how he felt in your presence, your calmness, your attention, your ability to truly be there. That becomes his emotional home. That's where love grows. Not the kind that burns hot and fades, but the kind that deepens over time. The kind that survives both the good and the hard days. And when you don't use these qualities to impress anyone, but live them because they are part of who you are, then the right man will appear. You won't have to search for him. You won't have to convince him. He will see you, and he won't run from your authenticity. He will honor it. So please remember this. True love is not something you chase. It's not something you have to earn or capture. True love arrives when two people have made peace within themselves and recognize in each other the strength they've already built inside. That's the kind of love that never asks you to prove yourself. It's a relationship where you are both free and still choose each other every day. Not because you have to, but because you want to, and because you want to grow together. And when you experience this kind of love, when you know you are seen and loved exactly as you are, you'll never settle for anything less again. So while you read or listen to this, remember, this isn't a story about how to find a man. It's a story about how to find your way back to yourself. And when you do, love becomes the natural result, not the goal.